welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host in this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Arthur Vay, known for his work as Black Armour Photography and Sydney Site Photography, talks about his journey into landscape photography, transitioning from using the art form as a stress relief method to developing it into a professional pursuit. He shares his experiences with mental health, the therapeutic connection he finds in nature, and how a mentorship helped refine his skills. He offers insights into balancing business commitments, the importance of setting boundaries, and the extensive time he dedicates to editing his images. Through personal anecdotes and professional tips, Arthur emphasises the healing power of photography and its profound impact on his life. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Arthur. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Not too bad, Grant. Thank you for having me and welcome.
Yeah, pleasure having you and welcome to the show. It's great to finally catch up with you. I've seen a bit of your work around the internet. For those that don't know, Arthur's, what is it, Black Armour Photography?
Yeah, I'll go by Black Armour Photography and Sydney Site Photography for my business.
That's right, yeah. So if you're looking for him, that's where to find him on Instagram. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into photography first off, and where, I guess, one of the things that I'm really interested in exploring with people is where photography started but turned into art, as opposed to just documenting your day-to-day or documenting a trip or travel or whatever.
I've always been drawn to nature. I've always been a type of person that would go hiking, and I always found nature to be healing, grounding as well. And yes, I've always had that connection with nature. Now, how that translated to photography was quite a bit of a difference. Many years ago, I was working in an industry that was very, I wouldn't say, it was just very intense. And I had massive responsibilities. It was part of an enforcement sort of background, and the training was a little bit intense. There were lots of things happening around that time as well within my life. And I literally picked up a camera just to balance out that stress that I was experiencing at the time. And mate, that's how it started. I ventured out to nature, like I said, because that's where I found my grounding, and that's where I reset. Brought my camera one day and I tried to capture the Milky Way galaxy. I failed, but I was there for 3 nights and I just completely connected with the camera and nature. And that's where my journey started.
Yeah, okay. And where did it turn into art? You tried to get your Milky Way shot, but was that thinking of that as being an artistic venture, or was that thinking, okay, I'm going to go out and try to capture the Milky Way because I've never done it before? What was you thinking with your thought process in going out and doing it in the first place?
That's an interesting question. So to be quite honest with you and straight, I never expected my photography to turn into art. It was more a tool to balance out my stress.
Sure.
It was more the obsession about capturing the perfect photo for me. So the whole process of doing my recce, so my reconnaissance, and the whole process of capturing the photo, getting up, traveling, staying late at night to capture the Milky Way or the sunrise. That's what I was after. Now, the bigger reason behind that was the feeling that I had inside me, because I've suffered. I wouldn't say I've suffered, but I've experienced mental health from a young kid, and the feeling that I was getting from taking beautiful photos in my eyes, I was quite happy with what I was capturing, alleviated that, and that's what sort of drew me to dig into photography more and more. And eventually it did become art, but that wasn't for a long time. The main reason was to balance out my mental health and what I was feeling. Yeah.
And what was the trigger point where I know I can pinpoint when I said, okay, switch went in my brain and said, this is actually an artistic pursuit, not just a recording pursuit, not just a stress release. It's more than all of those things. It is all of those things as well, but it's more than that. And it's now a creative pursuit that I'm now going, okay, I'm out to actually create a piece of art as opposed to going out just to relieve stress. It does all of that, but
Right.
it's the main point of what I'm doing now is very intentionally creating art. When did that sort of switch go in your brain?
That's a good one. So many years ago, a mentor, he then became a mentor of mine, actually reached out, and I was posting on Instagram, and obviously with Instagram back then, because I joined Instagram many years ago when it wasn't very saturated. So I was getting the likes, and obviously there was a lot of traffic coming into my Instagram.
Sure.
That's another topic. But anyways, I don't think it correlates really with art, but that was motivating me at the time. And anyhow, a mentor, which later became a mentor, reached out and just gave me some advice on some of my photos and said, mate, I can see a lot in you.
Yeah.
I can see you've got room for some improvement. And I had a look at this guy's page, this gentleman's page, and I was completely blown away, man. And this guy has his own gallery, sells to online galleries overseas, sells to hotels.
Yeah.
This guy's a big deal. And I fell in love with his style because it was similar to my style. My style sort of dark and moody.
Yeah.
And it was dark and moody, but on a more artistic, fine art level. And that's how I got inspired. And then that's when I pursued that journey of turning my photography into art. And that's where it started. It started from that point.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember the first landscape shot that you took where you said that made you feel this is it? And what was that moment like for you?
Yeah, so the first landscape shot I took was in Little Bay. It was an amazing sunrise. And that's when I got into my filters and
Nice.
the thing stops, and I was trying to capture that sort of nice artistic look, that 6 minute exposure look with the clouds just shooting past. And
Yeah.
all I can say is when I looked at that photo and, excuse me, I incorporated some of the advice of that mentor into that post-processing. And I looked at that product, I looked at that image, that art piece that I took. That was it, mate. It was just a liberating feeling. I was completely blown away. And that's when it all started for me again. That was a second win into the artistic realm. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And now that you're in that space, do you have a process for setting creative challenges for yourself? Do you pre-visualize your work before you go out and shoot it and think about how you're going to process it before you shoot it? Or is it more an organic process that just happens as you go through it?
So when I'm heavily involved in reconnaissance and planning. I pretty much know exactly what I'm going for. I know exactly the shot that I'm taking.
Yep.
I'm quite OCD like that. I'll go out on spreadsheets and all sorts of stuff, and I'll look at timings, mate, and the whole shebang. But I know exactly what I'm basically capturing. So if I travel to New Zealand, for example, I went and captured this frozen lake in Hooker Lake, and I had to time it perfectly for the snowfall, and I had to time it perfectly for the whole lake to be completely frozen. And I did exactly. So I did a bit of a time blending process. Where my camera basically didn't move for 6 hours, and then I was just blending in different elements and different lights just to create that vision. Mate, it was about -3 degrees for 6 hours, and the wind was about 80 kilometers an hour. And I had all that frozen sort of dust, the frozen ice dust.
Yeah.
It was from the lake going into my face. So it was grueling, but that's just an example. I wanted to capture that photo, and I remained there for 6 hours in those conditions for one photo. And that was dedicated to my dog that passed away. So that's why I did that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can tell from the way that you talked about it that you loved every minute of that 6 hours too.
Listen, it was quite challenging. All I can say, if it wasn't for those hand warmers, the ones that you snap on, I'd be in a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, I had my friend there with me as well, and he's a keen landscape photographer, but he's not as mental as me when it comes to stuff like that. Yeah. So I felt sorry for him, but he did the right thing, mate. And
Yeah, fair enough. You talked a little bit about your style being a bit dark and moody, and I'm interested in how your personal experiences or emotions have influenced the way that you've actually shot and the way that you process your images.
Dark and moody resonates with who I am and my past, and obviously it goes down to mental health, depression, anxiety,
Mm.
and I reflect that with my processing and the style of photography that I capture. Sorry, man, what was the question again?
I'm interested in how your personal experiences and emotions influence the landscapes that you choose to photograph, but also the way that you process it.
Yeah, so I I just connect. I really connect to the environment that I'm in, and yeah, okay. It's quite. It's just my processing. It's my processing. It's the way I emphasize visual direction. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And a lot of my images are very dramatic with light. So you'll see like a lot of my latest images, for example, have a lot of rough waves
Yeah,
and
yeah.
have not a depressing, but a very moody, very dark landscape. But
Hmm.
there's always light. There's always some hope, and there's always beauty in that dark space, that dark sphere.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how everything aligns with my emotions, and that's what I try and emphasize always. It's always going to be cold. There's times where I might have some nice colors as well, but predominantly that's pretty much it. That's the way I process, and I tend to be more drawn towards those dramatic, sort of rough environments. Yeah, and that's where I focus the most, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about projects? Do you create running themes in your work, or are you just producing work as it comes to you, and there's no real sort of set mindset that you've got for the work that you're producing?
I wouldn't say there's projects as such. That is something that I'm looking into. As I'm maturing and as I'm getting a bit older, I am looking into doing some projects, especially more in my architectural space, which we can talk about a little bit later. But no, I'm pretty much. I know what I'm doing. If I'm going to New Zealand, I know the shots that I'm getting, but there's no specific project as such at this
Yeah.
point. Pretty just organic. Once I get there, I know what I'm shooting, but it doesn't really relate to anything particular, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Okay. What about experimentation? Do you do any experimental sort of photography? Is there new techniques that you're trying that might be slightly out of the ordinary? And I guess with experimentation also comes, it's a bit like when you first did your Milky Way, you came away with a shot, might not have been the best, but you come away with it going, okay, what have I learned out of that? How do you deal with that learning process of experimentation?
Yeah, so I was down at the south coast, the far south coast, so the
Mhm.
Sapphire Coast to be exact, and this was last year. I was capturing the Milky Way at the back of Horsehead Rock,
Yep,
and that was quite a wild night actually because I got caught in there. And I don't know if you've been down
I
Horsehead Rock.
have. Yeah, it's a bit sketchy. There's only two ways in, one sketchier than the other. So,
Okay, I came in the sketchy way. I don't know about the other way. And I got caught into the high tide and I had to go back out at about 1 in the morning.
yeah,
And
okay.
it's my lights. I lost everything. It was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I thought I was about to meet God that night. So
Okay, wow.
yeah, it was quite scary. But going back to experimentation, I've never been a fan of light painting.
Yeah,
Okay. And I wanted to light paint the foreground. So put my drone up very high and I did a slight sort of swipe across the foreground, and they gave me this nice, even, subtle light.
yeah,
There was a lot of blending involved. Yeah, I'm more into experimenting with light painting, but in a more subtle way. Maybe
yeah,
from maybe, maybe from a distance,
yep,
bouncing it off, let's say, other rocks or other sort of natural elements,
Sure.
Nothing too direct, and that's what I achieved that look that I wanted. I wanted that nice subtle look because it gets really dark.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah. There's absolutely no light down there at night in around the rocks.
that's right. So it's actually one of my photos on my Instagram, and I'm happy to share it with you a bit later. But
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
actually see how nice the foreground actually looks, and it's not overly done. So yeah, I was quite happy with that. So
Awesome.
experimenting in dark conditions is something that I'm into at the moment.
Yeah, okay. What about where the experiment hasn't quite given you what you want? What are you doing in terms of taking those learnings and re-inputting into trying again or giving up?
That comes with so you're never really giving up in photography. I think you're always learning. I've never given up. But
I've
yeah,
given up on doing weddings.
I'm with you on that one, mate. I'm with you on that one. Yeah, wedding's quite a tough space in photography. It can break you completely.
Absolutely. In a lot
Uh,
more ways than just mentally.
yeah, 100%. To be honest, Grant, I never really give up. I always try to perfect my methods.
Yep.
If it's something that I have my mind on, if I'm razor focused on one thing, and for example, this month or this year might be creating nice subtle light in very dark sort of conditions. It's no failing, mate. It's just getting it right, and you will get it right eventually with
Yeah.
trial and error, lots of research, self-directed learning. You will get it right, and that's the beauty about photography. Like there's no right or wrong. You eventually create what works for you. You know what I
Mm.
mean? That's essentially what I've done.
Yeah. I find some of the accidents actually I don't always show them, but some of them you look at and go, I don't mind that. There was one long expo, I think, where was I? Up at Woolgoolga and shooting a sunrise, and I kicked the tripod. And I think it was something like a 3 minute exposure. So the rocks bizarrely were quite sharp, but there was a lot of fuzziness around one corner of it where I'd obviously jarred it. And the effect, it was all pink and orange and everything because it was a long exposure just as the sun was coming up. And I actually quite liked the way that it looked.
So that would have been a wild photo, mate.
Look, it is up on my Instagram as well. I quite like it, but it might not be everyone's cup of tea. But yeah, for me, some of those accidents and some of those things that you learn from the way that you're trying to do something a little bit different, or you're trying to do something that doesn't quite work out the way that you set out to do it. Some of the best experiences.
100%. No, 100%. Yeah, I agree. It's also, I wouldn't say 100% related to that. When you go out and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling it 100% this morning, but then somehow you walk away with the best photo.
Yeah.
Somehow you get that amazing horizon, that gap, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't know, yeah, there's been times where I've been on site thinking it's not. I'm always having fun on wherever I'm at, but you walk away and you're completely surprised. And I guess in your case, it was that accident.
Yeah, yeah. To me, a bad day's photography is way better than a good day at work. Yeah.
Great way to look at it. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
What do you do for work now?
I'm retired, so I do photography for work. So it's always a good day.
Awesome, mate. You're living the dream.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you define success in your photography? What does success in your photography look like?
Success in my photography is getting your business. So if you're like, I am a full-time photographer, so
Mhm.
I'm more in apart from my landscapes, I'm in the architectural sort of commercial world and construction,
Yep, yep.
sort of the built sphere. And success in photography is being able to build your business up to a point where you can comfortably, and this is important, take your kids to school every morning and pick them up.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you've achieved that, you're financially in a position to provide for your family and all your expenses, and you can still do. That's my success there.
Nice, nice.
So you got to read in between the lines there.
I'm doing a bit of that. Yeah. I'm interested. You talked a little bit about some mentoring, but also self-guided learning, what has been the most effective thing that you've done to improve your photography?
So my mentor basically said to me, okay, I'll give you an example. He said to me, room is good, it's great. You can create amazing photos in Lightroom, Photoshop
Hmm.
as well. But in Photoshop, you need to learn layers and masks.
Sure.
Okay. And then he said, but if you want to take your photos to another level, you need to learn luminosity masks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he paved the way for me. And he basically said, you need to learn this. And when you learn that, come and see me. So it was a
Yeah.
step process.
Okay.
And I think that's what really took my photography to another level. I got really involved with luminosity masks and how powerful these masks are.
Sure.
You can paint light, you can change colors, you can do so many things,
Yeah,
blend things.
I use them all the time, and I totally agree. It was one of the things that was probably one of the biggest step changes in my post processing was going really targeting the areas that you want to affect
Yeah,
with whatever it is, whatever the edit is that you want to do, whether it's a contrast curve adjustment, whether it's a hue
yeah.
or a saturation adjustment or whatever.
I use them a lot for blending, especially in the architecture world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You blend skies, you're allowed to blend skies there.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
all of the real estate stuff that you see where you can actually see out the window instead of just seeing a white blob there.
Stop you right there. Architecture and real estate, very different.
I know, I know, I know.
Very different, mate. Very different. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. So I use them a lot for color dodge and burning, very selective color dodge and burning. Also, yeah, like I said, blending and basically, yeah, that's pretty much what I use it for. Also creating contrast, a lot of things. They're very, very powerful. There's so many things you can do. And if anyone can take anything from this, from today, it'd be learn luminosity masks. Don't be scared of them. Don't be afraid. There's so many tutorials. There's so many plugins these days you can actually you can get for free as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
there was one, I think TK7, TK9 that I used to use.
Yep.
There's so many ways you can.
There's a plethora of tools out there that do similar things. There's just a mile of them that it's about finding one that you're comfortable with the user interface and that actually gives you the flexibility that you want.
100%. And also, what also helped is understanding colors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Color theory is probably the other thing that I'd recommend
yeah,
for anyone that wants to learn their photography and bring it to another level.
yep. Color theory. And also understanding like what you're trying to portray in a photo. So for me, successful, and like I said, this is just my opinion. There's no right or wrong in photography. Something that I've learned myself and discovered is, in my eyes, what I'm trying to achieve is a starting point and a finishing
Mhm.
point. I
Yep.
don't like the eye to get too confused and to go everywhere. I want it to seamlessly come in from the foreground and into the background. Do you get me?
Yeah,
So
yep.
I think incorporating all those sort of things together is what makes what takes your photography to another level and what sort of got me more invested in perfecting my photography. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to move on to talking a little bit about the business and how you made the decision to give up whatever it was you were doing beforehand and say, all right, photography's it. How
Yeah.
how did that happen for you?
It's funny. That all started with my black armor photography. I got someone that reached out to me and it was just a construction company, a civil
Yeah.
company.
Yep.
And they said, "Oh, mate, we like the way you take photos." I'm like, "Oh, thanks. Would you be interested in doing some of our projects?" Now, I didn't realize how big these guys were. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'll do it for free because I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was actually civil works. So they they build roads and they do footpaths all around the city, and the surroundings of the city as well in the west. So it started off from that. I started taking photos of footpaths, and then I was like, this isn't actually that bad. It's similar to landscape photography because,
Yeah. There's a lot of things that correlate.
yeah, the light, the buildings, and there's trees, and I'm trying to make things look like nice. And I was like, okay, I liked it. And next thing, I'm working for this company. I'm doing all the projects. That lasted for about 5, 6 years. And then after that, that's when I decided, okay, there was part-time for about 3, 4 years. And like I said, you don't fall into it like that.
Yeah, it's hard to just make a clean break.
100%. And then after that, another major Australian construction company hit me up, and they said, listen, we've got a few projects as well. And like I said, I underestimated how big these people were. And then when I projects, I was like, I was literally thrown in the deep end, mate. We were talking like huge commercial projects. And I was like, wow, I need to perform here. I really need to know my stuff here. But I did. I had that experience, obviously, with landscapes and working in a civil realm. And I invested in a tilt shift lens, which I needed for this project. So I bought a couple of tilt shift lenses, and that was it, mate. They really liked my photos. And what really helped me, and I think not separated, but stood out a little bit, was my experience in landscape photography and the way I color graded. And I've incorporated that into my own sort of construction architecture style.
Yeah.
Started, mate. After that, I started having all these companies hit me up. And that also happens because every year, all the construction companies and architects and all these other built sort of sphere companies have something called the MBA Awards.
Okay, yeah.
Year, and basically it's like a massive gala, like a big, and you might have Build Corp, Richard Crooks, Multiplex, all these big companies.
Yeah.
And what they do is you pretty much win projects, and when you win a project, your name's underneath the photos, the award-winning projects. Cool. So everyone else gets to see this, and then they're like, oh, who's this guy, sort of thing, and then you just start getting busy from there, and that's how it started for me, man, to be honest.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'll do now. I'll shoot with builders, a lot of architects, in construction, crane companies, all that sort of sphere.
Yeah. What's the most important thing you've learned out of running your own business?
Mate, I'm still learning. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still learning. The most important thing is don't overcommit.
Yep.
It's very important. Don't overcommit. Set some boundaries, because you can really burn out. When you're in that position and you're dealing with these clients, okay? I'll just give you an example. There might be a project worth 250 million, which is a standard thing that I shoot now. Okay. Yep. That's a standard sort of thing that I shoot. Now, the responsibility behind that is capturing the architect's vision. And you only got a window. Then you've got the construction company that wants their photography as well. Yep. You have all these other stakeholders involved. Okay. That puts a lot of pressure on you. You might not realize that puts a lot of pressure on you. So then when you start overcommitting and you're committing and you take more on and take more on and take more on, it can have a very negative effect to the point that you're out. And that I experienced that last year. And it's not good. Yeah, I experienced that last year because I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I've got a bit of OCD. So I'd be out shooting all day, for example, and I'd come home 6, 7 o'clock, say hello to my family, kiss it good night, and I'd be up editing till 4 in the morning. Again, shooting at 9 in the morning, over and over and over, because I had deadlines.
Yeah, that's it. They expect them almost immediately.
Correct. And that's the issue, man. That's the only thing that I've learned is set some boundaries, don't overcommit, and just select who you work with. Make sure they appreciate you and they don't expect things from you, because I've had that as well. Yeah. And you'll learn that in business as well. As you work with certain clients, you'll learn that the biggest thing is respect and appreciating you for who you are. And that's it.
Yeah. Makes a big difference.
100%.
What about marketing your personal brand? What do you think is probably the most important thing there?
To be honest with you, I know this might sound weird. I really haven't marketed my brand. I'm a product. I'm the product of my own brand. My photography is all very in the business sort of side of things. It's all very uniform. And yeah, the companies have done the marketing for me. I've been featured in a few of the NBA magazines. I'm across the internet on some of the projects themselves. So some of the government websites, universities. I've
Sure.
got Sydney Modern Art Gallery, for example. So you'll find things, and I guess what happens in that sort of industry, or that part of photography, especially in construction, people might want to buy photos. So let's say stakeholders for a project might want to buy photos, and then they'll literally look you up. They'll look up, for example, let's just say City Tattersalls is one project that's getting built at the moment that I've been involved in. And then they'll say, oh, okay, who's a photographer for these photos? Arthur Vay. And that's how marketing happens.
Yeah, right.
It's different. So
Yeah.
I've got a website. I've taken it down now because I'm branding the next year. Marketing happens by itself. If you're good at what you do and you're passionate, basically clients start coming to you.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move back to the landscape sphere. Where do you like to shoot? Do you have a favourite spot that just keeps calling you back?
Listen, I've been in New Zealand about 8 years, consecutive years, except for this year.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you're right.
Soul land. It's like a soul country. There's something really that grounds me and connects me to New Zealand. However, the last couple of years, I've also been visiting the Sapphire Coast. It's just something amazing about the South Coast, from Kiama all the way to Eden. And that coastline is just so cool. So I'm really drawn to the South Coast at the moment, to be honest. And also recently, the Great Ocean Road. So if you see some of my photos on Instagram, the later ones are all the Great Ocean Road. So it's quite a tricky one. So yeah, I've got New Zealand that's always going to be there. New Zealand's like this big beast that's always inside me. You've got the South Coast, but you've also got the Great Ocean Road, which is part of New Zealand and part of the South Coast together at one. And that's how I describe the Great Ocean Road. So yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker, mate. I can't give you one specific point or one area, but
no, that's fine.
It stretches from the South Coast to the Great Ocean Road and New Zealand.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. That's where you'll find me now.
What's your most memorable photo shoot?
Most memorable photo shoot would be the one in New Zealand I spoke about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that was dedicated, that shoot, the whole planning, going to New Zealand for that photo was all dedicated to Rocky, which is part of my family for 15 years. And I knew that was going to be a grueling shot. I knew that there was going to be a lot of pain involved behind that, just to even capture that photo. Yeah. And that was the most memorable because it was quite emotional, and it was really evoking those sort of deep sort of emotions. And yeah, I'd say that's definitely my most memorable shot.
How's landscape photography shaped your relationship with the natural world?
Like I said earlier on, I've always been connected to nature. Nature's always been a space where I ground myself, I reset, and bringing the photography part and element into that has just opened up another world for me. And that's pretty much how it's happened.
Okay, cool.
Did I answer that?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, cut it.
Yeah. I'm interested in how you think about your photography in terms of when you're coming back from a shoot. Are you straight into the edits, or do you like to leave things until they've had a bit of time to mature and you've stopped thinking about that trip and you've then decided, okay, I'll pull them out of the archive and off we go?
That's a really good question, my friend. That's a really good question. It's a funny one because when I was an Instagram photographer...
There's a big difference, yeah.
When I was an Instagram photographer, I'd make sure I was the first man. When we had that banger, amazing sunrise or that glow through the harbour bridge that I captured every Saturday. Yeah. I always wanted to make sure I was the first guy on my laptop. I'd even bring my laptop sometimes and I'll make these quick adjustments in Lightroom and I'd
Wow.
like post because I wanted to get those likes back then. I had that mentality, which
Yeah.
quickly changed. But no, as I've gotten to really appreciate photography as an art, no, there's no real time. To be honest, I still have photos from my New Zealand trip 2 years ago, which I haven't touched. There's no real time. It's just when you feel like you have to, you edit them. And I what I normally do now, I might like let's say select 5 or 6 images, and I'll
Mhm.
just let them sit and marinate on my computer. I like to spend a couple of maybe about 5 to 10 minutes on each one every few days. Just make micro adjustments and just let them sit there, mate. Sometimes I'll complete the photos. I wouldn't complete, but I'll edit them at 80%,
Yep.
let them sit there for another month, and I'll come back at them. So I feel like it's very important to really take the time because you've captured that photo once and you just want to make sure it's aligned with your vision and what you're trying to portray.
Yeah.
That's my theory behind that, man. So
Okay.
back to your question, it could be months and years until I touch my photos. Months,
Okay.
yeah.
And what about when you mentioned obviously using your luminosity mask without going into all of the detail? How long are you spending on a single image in terms of edit?
It's quite embarrassing. Anywhere between 2 to 15 hours.
Wow. Okay.
2 to 15 hours.
I know people that think 10 minutes editing's too much.
Nah, listen. On average, I'd say maybe 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Okay, 15-hour photos. There's not many of those, and that was because I just kept on deleting my layers, going back, deleting. It
Yeah,
wasn't a
right.
it wasn't a progression. So it was just that I wasn't feeling the vision and feeling basically the photo what I
Yeah.
was what I was trying to achieve. So I'll just delete my masks and layers, and I'll just get back into it again. And
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
but I'd say from start to finish, an average of maybe 3.5 hours
Right.
to get the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I tend to spend more time on things like the large panos where you're taking 20 or 30 shots or
yeah,
20 or 30 exposures,
yeah.
which might end up being one very large PS bill. Because what I tend to do is I break it up and then, so if I'm doing, say, exposure blending or time blending for a pano, and the pano might actually only be 9 or 10 images wide or whatever format I happen to be doing it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the ones that take a lot longer, but it's more that processing time of getting all of the exposure blending right before you then blend the actual final pano in the end. That's the bit that takes the time. But I'm rarely spending I'm normally somewhere between 15, 20 minutes on an image. That's about all I can sit there for.
And there's nothing wrong with that, mate. If you've got that eye and that vision,
I'm really interested in how different people do it. And I do have the question, what is it that's driving that amount of attention to detail? Because that's really what you're doing is you're spending a lot of time getting into the nitty-gritty. Are you pixel peeping and that sort of thing with it?
so for example, if I'm a big believer in sharp images across the whole
Sure,
frame.
sure.
So there'll be times where I might focus stack and I might do about 50 frames. So I might have this sort of massive rock in front of me or something that deserves detail. And as you know, like when you focus stack so many times, you got to lay everything together.
Yeah.
You've got to align everything perfectly. And then you got to make sure. So I don't auto blend, I'll blend manually.
Yeah.
Then I've got to mask everything out. And I always like to make sure everything's perfect. So it's quite steps. There's all these steps. Imagine having this frame and about 50 little lines going through them. And then I've
Yeah.
created masks and I'm blending things in. And then also keep in mind, if you're doing a bit of an exposure blend and you have a darker sort of foreground, obviously you might have some rocks or some things and you have these waves with lights coming in. And then you've exposed for the sky as well. When you go around those rocks, you get like a little halo sometimes. That's another thing that I'm really OCD with. I don't like that halo. So what I do, I might select the sky, then create like a luminosity mask, and then I'll do like a refined luminosity mask. So I refine everything in by 2 or 3 steps, and then I just start to feel that that halo, and that can take a long time. That can take hours itself. And ideally, why am I doing this? Firstly, because I've got OCD. Secondly, because I always shoot to print, because one day I might. So I just want to get it done once. I just want to do it once, and I want to do it properly, and I want to future-proof my artwork for printing.
For me, a lot of it depends on what I'm going to do with the image, because there are some images which I go, it's nice, but it's not portfolio worthy. And it's not something that I'll put into my print shop for people to buy prints of. And so I'm likely to only to ever use it maybe as a small image in a book if I'm going to print it at all. And I do quite a bit of printing, but if it's not that, then it's basically just social media fodder, and I take a lot less time with those sorts of images. If it's going to be something that I'm going to put into my portfolio, there's an image that I really love and I'm really passionate about that has to go into the portfolio, then I'm probably similar. I'm pixel peeping. I'm getting rid of all of the halos. I'm getting rid of all of the details that when you blow it up into a 1.5 by 2 meter print, it's sharp as, and you can see every detail, and there aren't any halos, and there's no crap in that image.
Inspire me. I might have to purchase one of your panos from my office.
That sounds good, mate.
Mate, I know this guy. No, it'd be great, mate. I totally relate and understand.
In terms of printing, are you doing the prints yourself, or are you using a service for that?
At this point, I'm only printing for a select few people. I'm not doing it actually. I'm not really invested in that at the moment. I am future-proofing myself because I've got quite a large sort of gallery where I would like to sort of print. But to where I print with this one person, and he's quite aware about the things involved and the steps involved to print a landscape photo, and that's quite hard. Without saying names, you can go to all these camera stores, for example, that offer printing services, but as you know, man, there's a lot more involved with color and exposure, and preparing a file for print is very different to preparing a file for a digital space.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
there's only a couple of guys I trust as well.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm very select with who I go to. Unfortunately, this gentleman's about to retire soon, so I might have to hit you up for some advice a bit later.
That's easy. Five Magics is, Patrick over there.
I've heard he's really good.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He knows his stuff, and he'll sort you out. And the good part about it with him is that you can have a really good conversation about what the end product needs to be, because particularly if you're blowing it up really huge, he can do quite large format for you. And if you need something, it's obviously not the sort of thing that you put on a billboard. That you got to go to a specialist mob for that sort of thing. Mind you, with some of your construction connections, you'd probably find some people that know that kind of stuff pretty well.
Very easily, man. Very easily. Speaking about Patrick, it's funny because I did have someone that requested for me to take a photo of the harbour.
Oh, yeah.
Of the harbour bridge, and I did a sunrise, but I went from Milson's Point and I captured the reverse lights on the harbour bridge, and it gives like a different type of contrast, a different look. It was about 40 minutes after sunrise, so you had that sort of nice light on it. I do shoot with the GFX 100S2, so I shoot with the medium format. Well, it's kind of a medium format, 100 megapixel camera.
Yep.
I used the 30mm tilt shift lens from Fuji as well, and I can't remember how many frames I got out. Anyways, I gave this guy this massive file, So I gave him a TIFF file, basically.
Yeah.
And I actually said to him to go to Patrick because I know my guy couldn't provide that size.
Yeah.
And so what Patrick did was he segmented the photo.
Yep.
The photo ended up being like around 6.5 meters by 3 meters.
That's a massive print. Yeah.
So it was going in a house that was getting built.
Okay, so they were filling a wall. Yeah.
Filling in a wall, mate, and it was literally a one-on-one print. To be honest, yeah, quite amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, Patrick's the guy, man. I've heard he's really good.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. I'd recommend him to anyone.
I'd have to hit him up, mate, when the time's right. Yeah,
definitely. The good part about it is that it'll drop ship as well. If you've got a client somewhere else in Australia or whatever, he'll handle all the shipping and everything for you as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Overseas is a bit different. I tend to then, if I've got an overseas client, what I tend to use is an overseas service. And there's a couple, one in London that I've used before, and one over in the States in where they're based. I think they're based in Seattle. Okay. I forget the name of both of those, but I can give you them to you if you want some tips as well.
Mate, I'd love to, because it's definitely, like I said, it's definitely a space I want to focus on in the new year. 100%. Yeah. 100%. I've never really printed some of my photos. Like I've got some in the background there. I don't know if you could sort of.
Yeah, it's a bit dark, but yeah.
It's a bit dark, but as you grow up, you're never going to really appreciate your photography until you see your photos printed large.
Totally.
It is completely liberating. It's mind-blowing. And if photographers out there are taking photos and you're taking photos for Instagram and all, that's fine. But honestly, shoot to print and print your photography. Just do it once or twice. And
yeah, even if it's just on an A4 sheet in a standard printer. I've got an A4 printer that I just use for proof. Have I got the color right? Have I got the tonal ranges right? And that's all I use it for. I don't print for putting into frames or anything like that. It's really just proofing before I send it off to Patrick to sort out properly for me.
Yeah, I know. Speaking about proof, my other friend, my mentor friend that I also talked to, his name's actually Nick Somaidis.
Okay.
Yeah, so also known as Nick Art.
Yeah.
So that's my mentor. And he's heavily involved in printing, but he does everything himself. Like he's got one of those large format printers, super large or large format printer, and colors and
yeah.
I don't really understand it much, to be honest, but he does these little proofs as well. They're only this small. And like I said, he does his own framing, he does his own printing, and he has to if you in that sort of position. But mate, I don't want to go that sort of scale. I just want to start off small, mate, and I've got a lot of work that I think is definitely worthy to be printed. Or it's all about giving it a bit of a crack, man, and just being happy to see your work out there on someone's board.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you ever struggled to find inspiration with your photography?
I'm just trying to reflect. The only time I've struggled to find inspiration is when I'm not in the right headspace mentally. I say it's not directly correlated with struggling, but obviously environmental factors.
Yeah.
And that sort of can make me struggle. But somehow, when I do get around capturing my photos, everything else dissipates.
Yeah, it disappears into the background. Yeah.
And then I'm back again. Yeah.
Nice. Would you give what advice? Sorry, I'll start that again. What advice would you give to somebody that you think might be struggling to find inspiration in their photography?
Listen, that happens. It happens to everyone. It happens to some of the biggest names in photography. Okay, it happens. We're just human at the end of the day, and we're not robots, and we are going to experience that at some point in our lives, even a couple of times. Take a step back. It's time to maybe think of having a bit of a break. Start reflecting on important things in your life, and then you'll be back again. And I think a lot of the times when people struggle to find inspiration, that's more of a symptom of something else.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a symptom of an underlying sort of issue that you might have subconsciously ignored, or not purposely. Could have been like maybe you weren't aware of it, but I think that's usually the number one symptom of losing inspiration. Because if you're addicted to taking photos and landscape photos, you're always going to love that. Your passion is never going to go away. You're always going to be passionate about it. Pay close attention to your mental health and to the issues in your life that might be causing that symptom.
yeah. Okay.
And once you get on top of that, once you get on top of that, you'll be back again, and then you'll feel it 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've touched on mental health a couple of times, and it's something that I think photography, as you've already alluded to, can really help people. And I'm interested in your own experience in how photography's helped you with mental health issues that you've had in the past.
Yeah. So my just a little bit of background on my mental health. It started from when I was 3 years old.
Mhm.
Something, without touching into it too much, something did happen to me when I was 3 years old. And then as I got older, I became more chronically aware of what had happened. So I started going through this processing period. And then it's just life. I had a few close friends. One of my best friends that committed suicide. And then I was quite young and I didn't understand what was going on, to be honest. I was quite naive. I didn't really believe in mental health and anxiety. I just didn't have that awareness and that knowledge until it hit me, until anxiety got the better of me. And then from anxiety, went into health anxiety.
Yeah, yeah,
I suffered health anxiety for many years. And that eventually progressed into burnout and depression. And yeah, so I've been there, I've suffered that, I've been right down to the bottom. And I can tell you now, photography immensely on a core and deep level really helped me with that, really helped me pay more close attention to more important things. And I'm not just saying photography, but nature, more of the simple things, more the simple elements
yeah,
about grounding myself. And that's what photography did to me. It got me away. It was like an escape. And it allowed me to be in this awesome space to process things. You understand? So it wasn't just
yeah,
a distraction. It wasn't just a distraction from what was going on. It put me in the space to process things. And that's how powerful photography is for
yeah,
me. Powerful. Because it's not just like I said, not a distraction, but a new space to process your feelings and what's happening in your life. And it's always done that for me. Thankfully, I'm not in that space anymore. Thankfully, I've overcome that. However, I'm very deeply passionate about mental health. So I'm a massive advocate, especially for men's mental health. I've seen a lot of people around me succumb to the depression, and yeah, so it's important for me to express that if I can.
yeah, yeah. No, thanks very much. It's something that I find very important too. And from my perspective, it's something that I'm always going to advocate for while I've got this platform to get people to get out, take photos, because as you
Yeah,
say, it does help you actually process, pardon the pun, but it the thinking time that it allows you, the time and the focus on doing something that has technical challenges, creative challenges, and so forth, gives you that space to actually think about what's going on in your life and can actually help you process through that and think about ways that you can actually solve some of the problems that you see. Anxiety, in particular, for me, has been a bit of an issue over the years, and photography's been a way of decompressing and relaxing from that anxiety and actually starting to go, okay, what's the worst case scenario here? The worst case scenario is you might lose your job or something equally as trivial may happen to you, but you're not actually going to die. You're not actually going to, there's no physical penalty to some of those things that are going on in your mind. And when you start to go through that and say, okay, well, it's actually all up here rather than something real, I'm not dismissing the fact that it could be something real, but if you actually start thinking about most of those issues that are there, your doubt, your imposter syndrome, your anxiety about whatever it is that's going on in your life, photography, as you say, can be a really massive helper in helping you get through all of those thought processes that are actually just your brain telling you good.
Listen, massive. Also, I need to mention, since we're on this platform, training, being like doing athletic type of training, Tabata, in interval training, keeping your heart rate at a zone 2 or 3 really there's a lot of scientific evidence, especially I think there was a study done in the university in Melbourne where incorporating like a good diet and training actually changes your brain chemicals in a way where it's more effective, 3 or 4 times more effective than the strongest antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications out there. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
It does take time. It's not going to be a quick switch because it takes time for your brain to rewire and the chemicals to take place. But I can tell you now, I suffered severe anxiety, severe depression. And once I started training, once I was out there taking photos again, once I started eating better, it was more of a holistic sort of approach.
Yep.
Right? It's anxiety and depression is a thing of the past for me at the moment. It's unbelievable how powerful. It's unbelievable. And like I suffered for years, mate. I'm 42 years old. I suffered nearly half my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was quite a significant time. But yeah, if anyone's out there, just remember, especially with anxiety, in my opinion, and it's not always the case, but in my opinion, anxiety is nothing but a conspiracy theory in your brain.
That's right.
Yeah. Thought in your brain, that's not real. You're thinking about the worst case scenario. It could be health, it could be a death, it could be anything.
Could be money, whatever.
Just remember, you're alive, you're okay. You can get through this.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to always help people. If people feel like they're in that space, I'm happy to always give advice, mate. That's what I love doing.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing some of your own experiences.
No problems.
Let's move back to the photography side of things. Where do you see photography in society? What's its place and role in society today?
It's definitely a way, its place is basically, it's definitely a way people express their artistic views on things. I feel like it's very important. And I'm going to touch on the space of how it can help kids and youth. Okay.
Yep.
And my perspective on photography with society is obviously there's a lot of misguided youths out there that are taking the wrong path in life. And it can easily happen. I was nearly there when I was young. Excuse to, especially with what happened to me, I had every excuse to rebel and to go down that sort of path. So I feel there needs to be more awareness on videography, anything that's artistic, and being filtered across to youths, more education, especially troubled youths, deter them from a very destructive path. And I feel if there's enough of that education and if there's enough resources out there and people take on that photography, especially in a social setting, I think it can immensely help a lot of people from going down that path. And that's something I've been discussing with my friend, to be honest, about potentially doing.
Nice. Yeah. What do you like to do when you're not doing photography? Training,
go to the gym a lot, spending time with my daughters, currently going through a bit of an issue at home, separating. I'm very attentive to my daughters. Hiking, eating food, and I read a few books as well. Yeah, but pretty much focusing on myself and growth.
Yeah, nice. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
So say that again.
The best and or worst piece of advice that anyone has given you?
The worst advice that I've been given is to listen to your parents about your career. And I fell victim of that. I listened to my dad when I was young, and wanted me to become a chef, and I thought, growing up in an ethnic little family, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll be a chef. Anyways, he ended up bailing from the family, went to live overseas, and I was stuck with this career that I absolutely hated.
Wow.
Yeah, so that lasted for a few years. And the best advice is that the best advice I was ever given was from my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
He's still around. He's 91 years old, and he's the most intelligent man that I know. And he said to me, Arthur, life goes on and life is beautiful. Don't stress. Don't worry about things. And that was at a time where I was struggling to have kids, and I was too
Yep.
concerned about having children. And he was basically saying, life is beautiful with or without kids. Don't stress about stuff like that. Don't stress about these things. Just focus on the now, focus on your life. And trust me, everything will fall in its place. So that's the
Yeah.
best advice I've been given.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Quite powerful from him.
We're going to have to wrap up shortly. I've only got a couple of questions for you. One is, do you have any names for me that I should be talking to on the podcast?
If you haven't spoken to him already, I find this photographer amazing. I actually did one of his workshops because I wanted to travel around New Zealand. He's an Aussie guy, but he lives in New Zealand now. William Patino.
Yeah, I've had Will on the show before. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's definitely an inspiring photographer. And mate, you can also reach out to Nick Psomoidis.
Yeah. Okay.
He's probably the most significant mentor and person in my life regarding photography. 100%.
Fantastic.
He's really up there. Every time I visit Melbourne, I catch up with him. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Yeah. Those two guys.
Thank you. My final question's one of the most important issues that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No, mate. No. Who likes pineapple on pizza? Who invented that? Seriously, like, no. Pineapple does not belong in pizza, mate. Pineapple's for a pina colada, or you know. What about you? Do you like pineapple?
I don't order it, but if it's there, I don't pick it off either. I'll eat it. You know, my favourite, to be honest, is actually just either your standard pepperoni or a thin, crispy sort of New York style one of them, or the Napolitano, just the basil buffalo mozzarella and
Wow.
tomato. That's it. Just pure.
Amazing, man. I love pizzas, mate. So are you from Sydney, right?
Yeah, I'm a Sydney boy. Yeah.
If you really appreciate pizza, because I like to venture out for food.
Yeah.
See on my stories, I'm always eating in different restaurants and trying different things. And that's why I go to the gym, mate, so I can burn all this stuff out. But there's a place in Marrickville called Pizza Madre.
Yeah, I know them. Yep.
Mate, honestly, it's a vegetarian pizza place.
Yeah.
Wood fire, but they change the menu every month. And honestly, they are like leading the way in pizzas in Sydney.
Yeah, no, they do a brilliant job. I love their stuff. Yeah,
I might catch up pizza one day there.
Definitely. Really appreciate having you on the show today, Arthur. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better, and thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom and some of your stories. Where can people find your work?
On my Instagram, Black Armour Photography. If you want to look at my construction architectural stuff as well, that's Sydney Site Photography. Both websites are down at the moment because I'm going through a new vision.
Sure.
I want to rebrand a little bit with my Sydney Site Photography, and I'm changing the look of my landscape Black Armour Photography as well. But yeah, I'd say by February 25, they'll both be online as a website. But all my latest stuff's on my Instagram at the moment, and yeah, you can find my work there. You can follow me there if you like, and follow my journey. Maybe next month I might be going to a secret little spot, so we'll see.
Fantastic. Thanks, Arthur.
Mate, I appreciate you, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, mate.
Have a lovely evening.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at gruntswinburnphotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.